So, in terms of globalization, uh, one of the top issues in globalization is recognizing we need to have global cultural competence, meaning we need to understand the differences in the way organizations engage in work behaviors, what their expectations are, what their assumptions are. There was a gentleman by the name of Hofstede. For those of you that have taken Management 522, you remember Hofstede talked about the different dimensions on which global cultures or national cultures differ. Individualism and collectivism, deference to authorities, comfort with ambiguity, sort of, and what they call masculine or feminine cultures, which that name has changed. So I'm going to be working to update lectures on that. But global competence is really key, whether we are in the military and we're being deployed someplace, whether we work in a private industry and we're trying to sell to other cultures, whether we are going to be stationed abroad for any number of reasons. We need to understand the way people do business so that we don't step in it, so that we don't make mistakes, because we want to be able to sell our products and services. We want to be able to do good work, in that sense. So global cultural competence is key. And honestly, cultural competence is key no matter what we do. Understanding organization dynamics, et cetera, is very important for a whole host of reasons. But nonetheless, the global cultures are really key for us because we're not isolated anymore. We work interdependently with groups all over the place. Outsourcing and insourcing is a big deal. For years, outsourcing was the thing to do, but now we're hearing that organizations are insourcing, where in the past they had exported, if you will, their manufacturing to other countries. Like, for example, we went south of the border to Mexico and we outsourced a lot of our labor and manufacturing processes in Mexico. And now what we're doing is we're bringing that back in. We're bringing it back in-house again. And part of it driving it is, of course, costs. As we go to other developing countries and we're trying to do this work, the costs are high. There is some instability in some countries. There's issues of education and skill set that we need to pay attention to. And sometimes it's about protecting our own labor force and bringing things home to make sure that our people here in this country have jobs that are good paying and they can make a living wage, and they can continue to make the products and services that we need to make our economy grow. So outsourcing and insourcing are two sides of the same coin, but one is where we export it out, and the other one is where we're bringing it back home after it has been out there for a while. The challenge is, somebody says, "Oh, we should only use American-made, products and services," and what is American-made? Is it that you can get your components from all over the place, but it's assembled here? Is that American made? Or is American made everything from beginning to end is all done within the boundaries of the US? And to what value is only buying something American made if it is not done well, if it isn't a high quality product, and if it falls apart? My daughter has had Ford cars for years and she just doesn't like it anymore and she wants to sell it. So we're certainly considering, what to do around that. But, Ford has a reputation for not always having the highest quality in their cars. Their trucks, a different story, but in their cars, maybe not so much. So that's an American company. Do we continue to support something with poor quality products? The best way we can communicate to organizations whether or not we like their products is whether or not we choose to buy them. So if people see a product, just blindly buying it because it's American doesn't necessarily get you a quality product. Sometimes we have to send the message that you don't have good emphasis on a quality product, and therefore I want to spend my money elsewhere on high quality products. When I was growing up, it was always a joke. We would say, "Oh, something was made in Japan." That was another, way of saying that things that were made in Japan were really poor quality. And in fact, after World War II, they were poor quality. The Japan manufacturing behemoth that we know now is nothing like it was in the 60s when I was growing up. And we literally laughed when we saw something made in Japan because it would fall apart. It just didn't have any quality to it. Um, and then somebody by the name of Edwards Deming went to Japan and helped them to learn about total quality management. And they jumped on that and they learned and they grew and they developed, and then they started to compete globally with higher quality products. And people went, ooh, big thing, not good quality, that's going to fall apart, or this other thing that has higher quality to it. What would I rather have? I'd rather have the higher quality product. Um, and so the K cars that came out of Japan in the 70s was a big part of that. So, and here's a great example. Lee Iacocca said, safety doesn't sell until Lee Iacocca recognized that safety does sell, that people want to spend money on safety features in their cars like seatbelts and airbags. And then he became a huge proponent of it because he saw the writing on the wall. He understood that, things that were not safe were not going to keep people happy and excited about buying them anymore. And this is the concern I have with a lot of the deregulation talk, right? A lot of let organizations just do whatever they're going to do. Let the free market manage it. Well, the free market is some people don't have choices. They have to buy a product, particularly if it's an oligarchy or a monopoly. Um, uh, and I think it's important for us to make sure that people have access to high quality, safe products, period. We don't want another Ford Pinto example. And for those of you that may not be familiar with Ford Pinto, look it up. Um, it was a disaster for Ford, and it was a disaster for American manufacturing for a long period of time, because we weren't considering safety, we weren't considering public image and public pressure to do the right thing. Um, Regulations on corporations gave us clean water and clean air. I remember there was a time when I lived in the tri-state area of New York, and you'd drive by Manhattan and it was just foggy and smoggy and full of polluted air, and you couldn't live there. Um, and so I find that to be interesting. I mean, Lake Erie and the rivers in Cleveland all were on fire because of the garbage and the pollution in the rivers. And now we have cleaner rivers, and people are much more involved in being aware of, the benefits of regulation, if you will, the benefits of having standards of quality that we can expect of people. So, long story short, going back to the comment on American made, I'm good with American made as long as it's done with good quality. I have no problem buying any product as long as it's a good quality product. For me, I will buy the best product that is safe and has good quality, and will not hurt me. Um, Lastly, this notion of globalization really means a lot of the boundaries between us, with trade agreements and things like that, of course, right? But um, that the boundaries between us are virtually disappearing, between the internet, between cell phones. The ability to have synchronous and asynchronous communication is removing a lot of the barriers for us to have global workforces. So you can be, IBM and have a North America and a South America and a Middle East and Europe and an Asian branches, and we can all collaborate and work together cooperatively in terms of making our products and services work. So this is not going away. The isolationism didn't work, and it never will work. Not as we are as advanced and growing as we are in terms of the interconnectedness of our economies and our relationships with other countries. Employee skills and continue to upskill. And what we mean by upskilling is today we need master's degree whereas 20 years ago a bachelor's degree was fine. Today we can no longer just have a high school diploma and expect that to get a good paying job. Why? Well, in part it comes down to globalization. It also comes down to technological advances. If you don't apply yourself in high school and learn how to use basic technology and have basic knowledge about how to use computers and math and things like that, graduating high school isn't going to give you the skill set needed to even run manufacturing equipment. So you do need to recognize that these things are all automated, that they need to be programmed, that we need to be able to monitor them, and we need the skill set developed around that to be able to do it. So the high school diploma, unfortunately, is no longer enough. Now, that's not to say that someone with a high school degree can't go and then learn a trade, for example, in carpentry or electrician or, electrical work or plumbing and things like that. You don't need to get a bachelor's degree to do that. And I'm certainly not implying everybody should go to college. Don't get me wrong. But what we're recognizing is we need knowledge beyond high school. We need more than just what we get taught in school, because often in high schools, kids are taught to memorize to answer the test rather than teaching them how to think critically, to reason through the material they have in front of them in order to be able to think more critically. So we do have shortage of high skilled workers. We do have shortage of people willing to work in the trades. And the trades are an amazing tool that people can use to get good jobs. You don't need to go back to school. You can get certifications. You can do apprenticeship trainings, all sorts of things. But you have to be willing to learn math and programming skills and things like that in many of these areas, not all, but in many of these areas, in order to be able to do those jobs. As technology advances, the upskilling to keep pace with technology advances, and we need to have that ability to do so. In terms of the transferable skills, this is a fun thing. I've done some research on this with some colleagues, and we make the case, right, that there are transferable skills that people can learn from online gaming. The MMORPGs require people to collaborate, to communicate, to work together, to manage resources, all the things needed for work in a 21st century economy that is more and more virtual. So there are advantages and benefits to the training that we get from, doing these kinds of games, the skills that we develop. And so we encourage you as managers and HR professionals around the world to rethink the way we think about people who say, I do online gaming. That there are some benefits and some skills that people can learn in that context that makes them, outstanding employees to be able to manage that. So definitely look for non-traditional ways to find skills that are not, necessarily easily translated from, book learning in the textbook. We want to do more than that. And in terms of employee skills, organizations are definitely much more involved in training. Generally, we see them doing things like literacy trainings and ESL trainings because they realize investing in their employees is so important to help them to be able to do better at their jobs. And as we hire people who are immigrants, helping them to learn English as a second language and helping them to be able to communicate in the workplace is really important. In terms of company-specific skills, in years past, companies were really reluctant to do a lot of training because they were afraid that people would walk away from the company and they would lose money that they invested. But you know what? You invest in this employee and they might leave, but you're going to get an employee that was trained by another company and they're going to come here. Instead of being worried about what might happen in the future, focus on what you need now and invest in people now. This is a giant soapbox for me because I have worked for companies that basically told me, well, we don't pay for training. I'm like, well, what do you mean you don't pay for training? Well, we just can't afford it. We just can't afford to train people to do certain things. I'm like, you guys know that I pay the bills, right? That I'm the accounts payable person. And that person is getting paid to take a conversational French class, and that person over there is getting paid to do their CPA prep course, and neither of them need those skills for the current job that they hold in the company. So why are you paying for their training, but not this training that you need for me to do my job? Oh, well, we know you see certain things that other people don't see, but our policy is we don't pay for training, so we're not going to pay for it. And then I left because I don't like that kind of hypocrisy in a company. If you're going to pay for it, great, you pay for everybody. If you're not, you're not. But be consistent and don't lie to me about it. So company-specific training. Now, mind you, that was 1987 or 1988, right, when that happened. Nowadays, we definitely see companies much more willing to invest in training and development. And I do a lot of extra training and consulting work based on doing these custom training things for people. So I'm excited to see that companies are taking training much more seriously than they have in the past. Development is key. Now, I always have told my students, and I will, that the only, the first and most important person to invest in you should be you. That you should be willing to do the developmental work needed for you to have the skills and the career that you need. Why is that? Because paternalism is gone. Remember, I said that before. With paternalism gone, there is very little that you can do, right? You have to pay for it yourself sometimes. And you have to advocate for yourself and invest in yourself sometimes. And so what I have found, funny enough, is when people advocate for themselves and they go to their boss nowadays and say, hey, I really need to learn this skill. Can you help me? They're finding creative ways to help people to develop the skills that they need. So we are focused much more on development now rather than putting the fire out with, oh, you need this skill today, here's a training to fix it. We're thinking more forward about what we need for long-term careers and things like that.